Marcus froze the moment he saw her sitting alone at the corner table, her wheelchair gleaming under the soft restaurant lights, and everything inside him screamed to turn around and walk out. His heart had already been betrayed so many times that when his well-meaning sister had signed him up for this blind date, he'd agreed only to get her off his back. But now, standing at the threshold of the upscale Italian restaurant with its twinkling fairy lights and the scent of fresh basil filling the air, he felt every fiber of his being resist. He wasn't ready for another disappointment, another story that would confirm his growing belief that meaningful connection was nothing more than a fantasy. What his sister hadn't mentioned, what he was certain she'd deliberately hidden, was that his date would be disabled. And in that moment of terrible human weakness, his first instinct was to lie and leave. The woman turned slightly, as if sensing his presence, and Marcus noticed her looking around with a gentle but tired expression. There was something in her eyes that suggested she'd experienced this exact reaction before, that she'd become accustomed to being someone's mistake, their unexpected burden, their reason to disappear. Her dark hair fell in waves over her shoulders, and she wore an elegant navy dress with gold jewelry that spoke of someone confident and refined. But what struck Marcus most was how alone she looked, not because of the wheelchair, but because of the way she held herself, as if she'd built invisible walls around her heart years ago. If you believe in the power of kindness and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. Every interaction fuels our mission to share stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Marcus should have left. Everything about the moment felt wrong, felt like a setup for failure. But something, a voice that sounded suspiciously like his conscience, whispered that this woman hadn't done anything to deserve his judgment. She'd shown up. She was here, vulnerable and brave, waiting to meet someone who might see her or might not. The least he could do was respect that courage. With a deep breath that felt like stepping off a cliff, Marcus walked toward her table. Her name was Elena, and she was the chief executive officer of a thriving tech company that revolutionized accessibility software for people with disabilities. She'd built her empire from her apartment, driven by her own experience of becoming paralyzed after a car accident 5 years ago that had stolen her ability to walk, but had somehow awakened her ability to dream bigger. As she spoke, Marcus realized that his initial discomfort wasn't about Elena at all. It was about his own limitations, his own narrow vision of what a life could be, what a person could be. She told him about her work with such passion that her entire face transformed, becoming luminous with purpose. She described the struggles of accessing buildings, of fighting for representation, of being underestimated constantly, but she spoke without bitterness. Instead, there was a quiet strength in her words, a resilience that made Marcus's previous romantic disappointments seem trivial and self-indulgent. The conversation flowed between them like a river finding its natural course. Elena asked Marcus genuine questions, not the performative kind people usually asked on first dates, but the kind that suggested she actually wanted to understand who he was beneath his surface. She laughed at his jokes with genuine warmth, not the polite laugh of someone going through the motions. She challenged his perspectives when she disagreed with him, speaking her truth without apology. And Marcus found himself doing something he hadn't done in years. He was being honest. He admitted to his fears of never being enough, of relationships always falling apart, of feeling invisible in his own life despite having everything he was supposed to want. Elena listened with an intensity that made him feel truly heard, perhaps for the first time in his adult life. As the evening progressed, other diners began to stare, some with curiosity, some with pity, some with the kind of judgment that comes from people who've never had to think deeply about their own prejudices. Marcus noticed Elena's awareness of these gazes, the slight tightening of her jaw, the way her hand momentarily gripped the armrest of her wheelchair. But she didn't let it diminish her. If anything, it seemed to strengthen her resolve to be present, to be fully there with him. And watching her navigate these moments with such grace and dignity, Marcus felt something shift inside his chest. He felt ashamed of his initial instinct to run, and more than that, he felt awakened. How many beautiful moments had he missed in his life by running away at the first sign of something unfamiliar? By the time dessert arrived, Marcus had stopped seeing Elena's wheelchair. Or perhaps more accurately, he'd stopped seeing it as something separate from her, as something that defined her or limited her in any meaningful way. Instead, he saw a brilliant woman who'd refused to let circumstance dictate her value, who'd turned her pain into purpose, who'd shown up to a blind date arranged by well-meaning but misguided siblings with the kind of hope that most people lose before they turn 30. He saw someone who was teaching him without even trying that real strength wasn't about never falling down, it was about how you got back up and how fiercely you lived afterward. As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Elena rolled her wheelchair backward with practiced ease, and Marcus found himself moving naturally beside her, not in a way that suggested he was helping her, but in a way that suggested he was simply choosing to be near her. They talked more in the parking lot, the cool night air wrapping around them as the stars began to appear overhead. Elena spoke about her dreams for the future, how she hoped to change laws about accessibility, how she wanted to help others find confidence after experiencing trauma. And Marcus realized that this woman, the woman he'd almost abandoned before even meeting, was teaching him the meaning of true ambition. It was as they reached her specially equipped vehicle that Elena turned to face him fully, and for the first time that evening, he saw something vulnerable in her expression. She reached out and gently took his hand, and when she smiled, a smile that held 5 years of struggle and hope and countless moments of invisibility followed by quiet determination, she said something that would echo in Marcus's heart forever. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered. "Not just looking at me, but actually seeing me. Do you know how rare that is?" Marcus felt tears prick his eyes. He realized that she was thanking him for something he'd nearly failed to do, something that should have been basic human decency, but had become remarkable in a world that often looked away. He understood in that moment that she'd been gracious enough to give him a chance to be someone better than he'd planned to be when he walked into that restaurant, terrified and closed off. As they exchanged numbers, making tentative plans to see each other again, Marcus knew with certainty that his life had just changed in ways he couldn't yet fully comprehend. The blind date that he'd almost sabotaged with his own fear had become the turning point of his existence. It wasn't a fairy tale where everything magically became perfect, but it was something more real and more valuable than that. It was a beginning, a true beginning, where two people who'd been hurt by life in different ways chose to see each other fully and to move forward together, not in spite of their wounds, but somehow transformed by them. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the importance of looking beyond first impressions, please engage with this video. Like it, comment with your thoughts, share it with someone who needs this message, and subscribe to our channel. Tell us in the comments if you've ever had a moment where you almost gave up but were so glad you didn't. Your stories matter. Your voices matter. And in a world that often looks away, we need to keep reminding each other to see one another, truly see one another, the way Marcus finally learned to see Elena.